Growing up, I was always the bigger kid. While other children were busy discovering their favorite colors, hobbies, or what made them special, my identity had already been decided for me was the fat one. Even in kindergarten, I stood out, my round cheeks and chubby limbs making me an easy target for teasing. As I got older, my body became an even bigger topic of discussion. And by the time I reached high school, there was no denying it, I was overweight. My size dictated how others treated me. Friends? Hard to come by. Attention from boys? Non-existent. The only thing consistent in my life was the constant ridicule. People laughed at me, whispered behind my back, and sometimes didn't even bother whispering. Every joke, every sneer, every cruel remark chipped away at me until I wasn't just the fat girl to them, I was the fat girl to myself. Books became my refuge. They didn't mock me. They didn't make me feel like I was less. In the pages of my favorite novels, I was the heroine, the warrior, the brilliant mind who conquered the world. But the moment I closed the book, reality came crashing back down, reminding me that I wasn't strong, beautiful, or admired. I was just the chubby girl who barely fit into the desks at school. Then there was my sister Bonnie. Bonnie was everything I wasn't: gorgeous, effortlessly charming, and universally adored. She was only a year younger than me, but it felt like she belonged to an entirely different world. Where I hesitated and second-guessed myself, she thrived, commanding attention the moment she walked into a room. She didn't just have friends, she had followers, people who hung on to her every word, eager to be part of her orbit. For a while, I admired her. She was my sister, after all. I looked up to her. I wanted to be like her, even if I knew deep down that I never could be. But admiration slowly turned into pain when I realized that, to Bonnie, I wasn't a sister worth keeping close, I was an embarrassment. High school made it clear that she was ashamed of me. At first, it was subtle. She would walk a few steps ahead of me in the hallways, pretending not to see me. She stopped inviting me to sit with her at lunch. Then, she escalated. Bonnie and her friendship-perfect, flawless friends started making jokes at my expense, acting as though I were some comic relief in the tragic comedy of their high school lives. They'd laugh as they walked past me, making offhand comments about my size. Sometimes, they'd trip me, sending my tray of food flying just to watch me scramble, red-faced and humiliated. Other times, they'd barge into my room at home, point at my body, and giggle like I was some sideshow attraction. Bonnie never stopped them. She joined in. When I finally mustered the courage to tell my parents about it, I thought they would step in. I thought they would protect me. But my concerns were met with dismissive chuckles and empty reassurances. "Oh, honey, that's just how siblings are," my mom said with a smile. "She's just teasing you, don't be so sensitive," my dad added. Their words burned more than Bonnie's. It was one thing to be tormented by peers, it was another to realize that my own family didn't care enough to stand up for me. The only time my parents paid attention to me was when I brought home perfect grades. Academics had always come easy to me, and for a brief moment, I felt like I had worth in their eyes. My mother would brag to relatives about my achievements, painting me as the smart daughter, in contrast to Bonnie's social brilliance. But even that turned against me. Bonnie hated being compared to me in any way, and she made sure to retaliate. If I had an important assignment due, I'd find my notes missing. If I stayed up late studying, she'd blast music in the next room. One night, I woke up to find my carefully written essay, the one that took me hours to complete, gone. Later, Bonnie admitted, with a drunken giggle, that she had tossed it in the garbage just to see me panic. Despite all of this, I still held on to the hope that our relationship would change. I hoped that one day, she'd see me as more than just a punching bag. But that day never came. Instead, Bonnie got engaged. I had been away for a while, building a life for myself in another city. When I finally visited home, I was genuinely excited to see my family. Maybe things had changed. Maybe, after all these years, Bonnie and I could find some common ground. That hope shattered within minutes. During our family lunch, Bonnie made her grand announcement, flashing her engagement ring with a victorious grin. We all cheered, congratulating her. I was happy for her genuinely. But then, just as quickly as the excitement built, she turned her attention to me. "So," she said, smirking, "you still haven't lost any weight?" The words stung, sharp and precise like a knife, to my gut. I forced a laugh, trying to brush it off. But my parents didn't let it go. "She's right, you know," my mom chimed in, shaking her head. "You should really think about losing a few pounds." "Yeah," Bonnie added, her smirk widening. "My wedding is in a year. Maybe by then, you'll look a little more presentable." The conversation spiraled from there. My family dissected my body. My romantic life or lack thereof fanned my perceived failures like I was some project they needed to fix. They praised Bonnie for getting engaged before me, treating me like a cautionary tale. "You're wasting your life," my mother sighed. "Wouldn't it be nice to have someone to come home to?" "At least try to lose some weight before the wedding," Bonnie pressed. "I mean, it's my special day. You wouldn't want to embarrass me, right?" I sat there, their words sinking in. Something inside me broke that day. I had spent my whole life trying to be seen, to be valued, to be loved by my family. But it was never enough. No matter what I did, no matter how successful I became, I would always be the fat, awkward disappointment in their eyes. But not anymore. That night, as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I made a decision. I wasn't going to change for them. I was going to change for me. That night, I lay awake, my mind racing. The words from on a loop, each one embedding itself deeper into my thoughts. I had spent my entire life enduring their taunts, their dismissals, their constant need to make me feel lesser. And for what? To be the forgotten, overlooked daughter? To be the one whose only worth was measured in how much space I took up? No more. I decided then and there that I would lose weight not for them, not to fit into their mold of what was acceptable, but for myself. At first, my motivation was fueled by spite. I wanted to prove them wrong. I wanted to walk into Bonnie's wedding and watch their jaws drop. I wanted them to realize, too late, that they had spent years belittling someone who had more strength than any of them. But as I started, something shifted. I signed up for a gym membership and found a personal trainer, someone who, unlike my family, actually believed in me. She had gone through her own transformation, and she knew exactly what I needed. A sustainable plan, encouragement, and most of all, patience. "Don't do this for them," she told me after our first session. "Do it for you." For the first time in my life, someone was telling me that I was worth the effort. At first, it was hard. The workouts were brutal. I woke up sore every morning, my body protesting against the changes. The food was different too, no more mindless snacking, no more emotional eating. I had to face my feelings, my cravings, my old habits. But every time I wanted to quit, I thought about Bonnie's smirk. I thought about my parents' disappointed sighs, and I kept going. The weeks turned into months, and soon, the changes became undeniable. The scale started moving. My clothes fit differently. My body felt stronger, lighter. And then, something unexpected happened. People started treating me differently. Strangers held doors open for me. Store employees were suddenly more helpful. Coworkers who had barely acknowledged me before started making conversation. For the first time, I felt seen not as the fat girl, but as a person. At first I was angry. Why did losing weight suddenly make me worthy of respect? Why had I been invisible before? But I pushed that thought aside, focusing instead on how I felt. For the first time, I liked the reflection in the mirror. As my confidence grew, so did my wardrobe. I ditched the baggy clothes that had once served as armor and replaced them with pieces that actually fit: dresses, fitted jeans, even a leather jacket I had always been too scared to wear. Then, on a whim, I changed my hair. My stylist suggested going blonde, a shade that brought out my features, making me look even more different than before. When I looked in the mirror afterward, I barely recognized myself. It wasn't just the weight loss. It wasn't just the hair. It was the way I carried myself. For the first time in my life, I felt powerful. With Bonnie's wedding approaching, my parents invited me to come home for a family lunch. They wanted to finalize wedding plans, and of course, they wanted me to be part of it now that I was suddenly acceptable. What they didn't know was just how much I had changed. I hadn't posted anything about my journey online. No progress pictures, no updates. As far as they knew, I was still the same girl they had mocked months ago. So I decided to go, not for them. For me, I wanted to see their faces. The moment I walked through the door of my parents' house, the entire room fell silent. My mother gasped. My father blinked in disbelief. Even Bonnie, who had been in the middle of a conversation, stopped mid-sentence. For a long, satisfying moment, no one spoke. Then my mom finally breathed out, "Oh my God, is that really you?" I smiled, setting my bag down. "It's me." They bombarded me with questions. "How did you do it? How much weight did you lose? When did this happen?" It was as if they had never considered the possibility that I could change, that I could take control of my own life. At first, I let them have their moment. I let them fawn over me, acting as though they had supported me all along. But then Bonnie stepped forward, eyes narrowed, her expression unreadable. "You really changed," she said slowly, looking me up and down. Something about the way she said it sent a shiver down my spine. Then she laughed a short, forced laugh, and before I could react, she reached out and poked my stomach. "Just checking," she said, smirking. "It's really all gone." A sick feeling settled in my gut. My parents laughed, brushing it off. But I saw it for what it was. Bonnie wasn't happy for me. She was threatened. And then, as if to confirm my suspicions, she said, "You know, when I told you to lose weight, I didn't expect you to look better than me." Her words hit the table like a dropped glass. My parents, who had been smiling moments ago, suddenly looked uncomfortable. Bonnie forced another laugh. "Wow, you really changed everything, huh? Even the hair. I mean, I always thought of you as the brunette of the family, but now..." She trailed off, her fake smile stretching tighter. My mother, sensing Bonnie's discomfort, quickly jumped in. "Maybe you should go back to your natural color," she suggested. "Blonde makes you stand out too much." Bonnie nodded eagerly. "Yeah, I mean, you were always the smart one, and I was the pretty one, right? No need to switch roles now." And there it was, the real reason behind their sudden unease. I had spent my entire life being the other one, the quiet one, the invisible one, the one they could overlook while Bonnie shined. Now that I had changed, they didn't know where to put me. They had spent years tearing me down, and now they couldn't stand to see me rise. I sat back in my chair, crossing my arms. "You know what's funny?" I said, my voice calm. "For years, you all made my weight the biggest problem in the world. And now that it's gone, you still have a problem with me." Silence. I turned to my mom. "You told me I needed to lose weight to be happy." "Well, I did. And guess what? I'm happy." Then to Bonnie. "You wanted me to change so I wouldn't embarrass you at your wedding. Well, here I am." I tilted my head. "What's the issue now?" Bonnie's face turned red. My mother looked away. My father cleared his throat. None of them had an answer. I stood up, grabbing my purse. "I think I've had enough for today," I said, my voice steady. And with that, I walked out. I didn't look back as I walked out of my parents' house. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel the need to explain myself, to justify my actions, or to shrink under their disapproval. I had spent years trying to prove my worth to them, years hoping that if I changed enough, if I was smart enough, if I was thin enough, if I was successful enough, they would finally accept me. But standing there, watching their stunned faces, I realized something life-changing. It was never about my weight. No matter what I did, they would always find something to pick apart. I drove home in silence, gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white. My heart pounded, not from sadness, something unexpected relief. I was free. That night, I ignored my phone as the text started rolling in. "Mom, you were very rude today. That was completely unnecessary." "Dad, your mother is upset. Call her." "Bonnie, you think you're so special now, don't you?" I tossed my phone onto my nightstand and let out a bitter laugh. Bonnie was right, I did feel special. For the first time, I wasn't playing the role they had assigned me, and they hated it. The following week, my mother tried a different approach. "Sweetheart," she cooed over the phone, "we need to talk about Bonnie's wedding." I sighed, already regretting answering. "What about it?" "Well, you haven't picked up your bridesmaid dress yet." "Bridesmaid?" I nearly dropped my phone. "When did I agree to be a bridesmaid?" Mom laughed, like I was being ridiculous. "Oh, honey, of course. You're a bridesmaid. You're Bonnie's sister. It's tradition." I gritted my teeth. "You didn't even ask me. It's a given," she said dismissively. "Besides, we need to make sure the dress fits you now." With all the weight you've lost, we'll probably have to get it altered, maybe even taken in. The way she said it, the way she finally sounded excited about me made my stomach turn. Mom, I said slowly, I never said I wanted to be in the wedding. The silence on the other end was deafening. What do you mean? I mean, I don't want to be in Bonnie's wedding. I don't even know if I want to go. The explosion was immediate. Are you serious? She shrieked. You would humiliate your sister like that? What will her fiancé's family think? There it was. She didn't care about my feelings. She only cared about how I made them look. Bonnie has treated me like garbage for years, I snapped. She humiliated me in front of the whole family, and now I'm supposed to smile and stand beside her like none of that ever happened? That's what family does, Mom hissed. We put things aside for special occasions. I clenched my jaw. Funny how that rule only applies when I'm the one getting hurt. Stop being so selfish, she snapped. Selfish. That word sent a bolt of fury through me. I had spent my whole life putting everyone else, first shrinking myself, enduring insults, staying quiet to keep the peace. And the one time I stood up for myself, I was selfish. I'm not going to the wedding, Mom, I said, my voice firm. End of discussion. Her voice dropped to a whisper, cold and cutting. You will regret this. Then she hung up. I sat there, my heart pounding. Would I regret it? Number. For once, I was choosing me. The next few weeks were blissfully quiet. I blocked Bonnie on social media. I stopped answering my parents' calls. I focused on my work, my workouts, my new life. And then, the day of the wedding arrived. I woke up in a luxurious hotel room, wrapped in the softest sheets I had ever felt. Sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating the breakfast spread on my nightstand: fresh fruit, croissants, a steaming cup of coffee. Instead of standing at an altar, pretending to be happy for someone who had never been happy for me, I was in a 5-star resort, treating myself to the best weekend of my life. I spent the morning at the spa, letting tension melt from my muscles. In the afternoon, I lounged by the pool with a cocktail in hand, feeling the warmth of the sun on my skin. I wasn't at Bonnie's wedding, and I didn't feel guilty at all. That night, as I scrolled through my phone, I saw that my parents had left me dozens of messages. Some were angry, some were guilt trips, and then there was the final one from Bonnie. A single text, I hope you're happy. I stared at it for a long time before replying, I am. Then I blocked her, and for the first time in my life, I truly felt free. The moment I hit block on Bonnie's number, a weight I hadn't even realized I was carrying lifted off my shoulders. I had spent years bending over backward to fit into a family that had never truly accepted me, exhausting myself in an endless battle for their approval. But now, I didn't need it. The morning after Bonnie's wedding, I woke up to a notification from an unknown number. You are a disgrace to this family. I rolled my eyes. Mom, of course. A second message followed. I hope you realize how much you embarrassed us by not showing up. Bonnie's in-laws were asking where you were. Do you know how awful that looked? I had to lie and say you had a work emergency because I was too ashamed to tell them the truth that my own daughter is a selfish, ungrateful brat. I didn't respond. I didn't need to respond. Instead, I smiled, stretched, and ordered room service. My parents could fume all they wanted. Bonnie could seethe. I had chosen me. I expected the silence to last, but a few weeks later, my father called. At first I ignored it, but then he called again, and again. Finally, curiosity got the best of me. I answered, Hello? A long pause, then a sigh. It's your mother's birthday next weekend, he said stiffly. She wants you to come home. I nearly laughed out loud. So, I'm a disgrace, but now I'm suddenly welcome again? He exhaled sharply, clearly irritated. Look, your mother wants the family together. Bonnie will be there. We can put everything behind us and move on. Move on. Like nothing had happened. Like they hadn't spent years tearing me down. I shook my head. You mean you want me to show up and pretend everything is fine, just like always? A long silence. Then finally, he muttered, Yes. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Let me make this easy for you, I said. I'm not coming. Damn it. Can't you just... I hung up. Blocked his number. Blocked my mom's... blocked them all. And then I went out to dinner with people who actually valued me. Not for how I looked, not for what I could do for them, but for who I was. For the first time in my life, I felt at peace. Months passed. I got promoted at work. I started traveling more, experiencing things I had once been too afraid to try. I started dating, really dating, without the self-doubt that had always plagued me before. I built a life without them, and I was happier than I had ever been. One day, a message from an unknown number popped up. "I miss you." I knew it was Bonnie. For a brief moment, I considered responding. Then I deleted the message. Some doors are meant to stay closed. And I was finally free.